All right, so we will discuss a little bit of the portal, back and forth, kind of a trade player to be named later. Joey Aguilar, yesterday late, is the one who decided he would be moving on, of course, from UCLA to Tennessee. Now, he now swaps places. Chris Lowe, ESPN, reporting he got about $1.2 million, which is slightly less, of course, about maybe half of what Nico was going to get in his last year or this year with Tennessee, who's now at UCLA. So that is official. Tennessee gets their quarterback, or at least they hope they do, as those two in a player to be named later trade, Tennessee and UCLA. Now, one other note about this is Madden Iamaleava, he's moving back home. He's going to UCLA after being at Arkansas. And this is going to string something together. We'll get to this in what else is going on here. But your thoughts, guys, we're going to hear from Sam Pittman on Iamaleava, the younger one, Madden. But your thoughts about this is this was pretty much, you could see this happening, and it's happened.
Yeah, look, good for Joey Aguilar to look trade up like that. And look, he might have wound up at Tennessee in the first place had they've been in the transfer portal the first time around in the winter. But yeah, I mean, he's a guy who's got some, he's Sun Belt Offensive Player of the Year at one point in his career. He's stepping into a team that's really good, and I like it. I wonder if we do get to a day where, because of collective bargaining and all this, that there are just straight up trades in college football. It's a little harder to do than in the pros, but that would be better than this.
Would it?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
I just asked that, like, really would it be? Because, how are you going to do that? Are you going to say we're going to give you a draft pick later on? I mean, how would that work?
I mean, I guess you could, like, I don't know. I'm just thinking like player for player kind of
trades.
I
think it's an intriguing idea, but when I hear about it, I'm just like, well, how would you do that? It's really
hard because you don't have, like, you can't give them a scholarship, you can't.
Who necessarily wants each other's players?
Yeah.
Would you rather just go get the guy from another school and just get him rather than, like, you have to give something up for it? So it sounds fun and unique, but yeah, I don't think I'm on board right now with the let's make trading players a regular thing. This just so happened to work out that way. That's all that happened. It wasn't like this was pre-orchestrated and this was some grand plan. It was just simple dumb luck that Joey Aguilar had already gone to UCLA, and then that's where Nico decides to turn his attention when Tennessee doesn't meet his demands. So I mean, I see where people are coming from, though. I just think it's like relegation. It's just a bit more complicated than just saying, yeah, you move up and down every year. Okay, explain that to your recruits, explain that to your fundraisers, explain that to everybody else that would have to worry about jumping down a level and then jumping back up a level and then staying there for a couple of years and then moving back down when you don't win enough games. It's a bit more complicated, but it is funny how this all worked out. So good on Tennessee. I think given the circumstances, they made out about as well as you could have. They got a solid player. I don't know if he's as good as Nico when all's said and done, but I don't think we've seen the best of Nico either. So they'll go out this fall and perform, and we'll see where Tennessee ends up and where UCLA ends up, and then there will be comparisons made. That we do know. Yes, there will be massive comparisons made, so I'm interested to see where all that falls, but definitely worked out in the most unique of ways that it possibly could have. And then to add, Nico's brother jumping into the portal, they're just pissing off the entire SEC, aren't they? They're just raising all of the Southeast, basically. I mean, it makes sense. And you know who the next quarterback's going to be after Nico leaves, or at least who they plan on the next quarterback being. So not all that surprising that he'd want to go join up with his brother. And UCLA is just completely leaning into being the bad guy, even though it's not really like anything that they've done illegally or anything like that. But again, another day where UCLA football is getting a massive amount of attention that they haven't been getting for quite some time. So does it turn into wins? That will be the key.
All right. So we've discussed players who have signed NIL and then moved on and signed with somebody else by the end of the day. And I guess there's nothing illegal about it, but the school would have to then take the player and or the agent or whoever to court, right? They would have to sue them. And there are thoughts that some players, that some schools might do that, and there's thought that some schools don't want to bother with it. Well, Arkansas, let's go this first. This was Sam Pittman on Madden Iamaleava after spring drills. Listen to how upbeat he was about the young man who's now headed to UCLA.
Done really well, especially coming off his, he didn't play his senior year. Very mature, well coached out of high school. But yeah, I think he's made a ton of improvement. And I think you'll see that throughout the rest of the spring and then, the summer and fall camp.
So that's Sam Pittman. That was when he thought that he would be, of course, throughout the spring and summer through workouts and then eventually playing for Arkansas this fall. That's not the case. Now, Arkansas Director of Athletics, Hunter Yurachek, put this out earlier this afternoon, speaking with leadership from Arkansas Edge, that's their NIL collective, expressed my support in their pursuit to enforce their rights under any agreement violated by our student athletes moving forward. In other words, if somebody, they can go after them if they feel like they should or can, then he will support them in doing that. And you would think coming after what Madden Iamaleava is leaving, that maybe there is some sort of contract there. So that's Arkansas saying that we might fight this a little bit.
Well, I think there definitely is. That's why they're talking about it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no other reason to just come out and say that if it wasn't based on Madden Iamaleava leaving. So, yeah,
no, it's the timing's perfect. Yeah,
I mean, clearly that's what he's talking about is Madden Iamaleava. So I think I don't know how much the young man was going to play this year. Taylor Green's a starting quarterback at Arkansas, and then you've got others on the depth chart, but obviously a young player that you were excited about and had some good things to say. So that's unfortunate for Arkansas fans who probably had to have some inkling that they could get a little bit of disturbance in the force when the whole Nico situation was playing out, and you're like, okay, well, what kind of an effect could this have on his brother and them all returning back to the West Coast? And so sure enough, here you are, but I like that instead of just, pouting about it, Arkansas is going on the offensive. And quite frankly, what's taken so long? Where are the contracts with terms to actually enforce some of these things? I mean, that's been the biggest part of the problem is there's nothing to enforce. There's nothing you can do. And I've wondered the entire time, how are these guys signing all these contracts that seem to not have anything that you have to uphold in them whatsoever? Like you hear about, they've got obligations, like they've got to go to an autograph signing or they've got to do this and do that. And we don't really hear much else about that. But how can you just pick up without having even ever played in a game and just leave with no repercussions? Like that doesn't happen in a lot of other jobs.
Signed contract, yeah.
That doesn't happen in any pro sport. So I've been wondering of when we were going to get to a point where contracts actually meant something because they've meant absolutely little to nothing up to this stage. So I'm all for this. I'm all for Arkansas. I'm not anti-player, but I do think there's got to be something to these contracts, or why are we even using contracts? So this is a long time coming. I am very curious to see how this now goes, and I do think it would be for the better of the sport if you could enforce these things and not hold the player down and they can't leave Fayetteville. But, hey, man, if we paid you $500,000 and you were here for 6 months, we want $350,000 back or something like a payout
based
for a
on
coach.
The timeline of when the end date would be.
Whatever that would
absolutely.
be. I'm not math smart enough to do that off the top of my head, but no different than a coach's buyout. I think that just makes logical sense, especially if you want to go, it's a pro sport now. It's a pro sport now. It's a semi-pro sport now, whatever it is. Yeah, so business is involved. Business is a big part of this business at this point, and contracts need to mean something. So I'm all for Arkansas pursuing what they can to recoup what they can.
I've had a collective tell me that they wish the university in which they are, entrenched with, that wish that they would sue for an NIL agreement that was signed and then left. So maybe that's starting to simmer a little bit. There's Hunter Yurachek on record as saying that. Whether that leads to anything, Paul, you were going to say something else. I don't know.
I think, and here's the thing, it's pretty cut and dry what you can go after these guys for. If they come to your school and just suck, you can't really do anything about that.
Nope.
That's just the cost of doing business. If you've
I mean, you can push them back in the portal, you can nudge them, but you can't really do much else.
do anything about to recoup the money you paid them if you went out and got them. There's a bunch of teams last year that went out and got a bunch of guys in the portal and weren't good, and that money's just gone. They set it on fire, essentially. But if you're like Madden Iamaleava and made a deal at the 11th hour to go to Arkansas instead of UCLA, which it likely included some upfront money, you should have to pay that upfront money back because all you did was practice. You didn't play in games. You did nothing.
If the language is in the contract.
Yeah, if the language is in the contract. Yeah. You did nothing in which was going to help profit the school or the collective in that regard.
If it also is dependent on the timeline, if it was for the fall and then you do this in the spring, I don't know if collective the agreements go from one semester to the next, which is a full year or what.
Well, in some of the stories written, I mean, there's the money facts on Joey Aguilar. He made $200,000 so far at UCLA. He signed whatever the total amount of the deal was. Thamel said he had $1.2 million left, so I guess his deal was for like 1.5, and then he's got to get this new deal at Tennessee. But okay, you made your $200,000. How does that work then if you're the collectives? I mean, I don't think you try to get that back, but what is the language of what was left on there and how does all that work? That's what they need to clear up.
If UCLA says, no, you can't leave without paying us back, then Tennessee might want to call UCLA.
Yeah, that's where it gets all very confusing, but that's for the lawyers to sink their teeth into. But yeah, I mean, if you've received a certain amount of money and there was an agreement or a language in that contract that said that, hey, if you're not here by a certain date, you have to recoup this amount or whatever upfront you got paid, then they need to enforce that. That needs to be, and if that language isn't in these contracts, then what the hell are these schools doing?
Yeah,
I mean, to not have,
they're learning too,
huh?
They're
learning too, but you would just assume, and this is the thing that's crazy about college sports is you'd assume these universities are smart. You assume that like they've got all these smart people under their roof, and sometimes they're the dumbest ones. It's amazing, but yeah, the schools are learning alongside as well. But yeah, you would think there would be some type of language put in there. And if not, then I think everybody's had enough wake-up calls at this point to go like, hey, we probably need some clauses in there that recoup some of our money if a guy decides to transfer before he's even made a semester.
That's one of those things where everybody, presidents or athletic directors or whoever, they start texting people within the school umbrella. Hey, by the way, have we done this? Have we protected ourselves? I'm sure that most collectives have, but this will be fun I don't know if it's funny. I hate it. I don't like that we're talking about legal terms, but at the same time, it's part of what it is right now. UCLA coach Deshaun Foster noted today that Iamaleava has to finish first his grades and his degree, at least for what this is a semester at Tennessee, before joining UCLA this summer. To be eligible, transfers have to finish classes. The same goes for Aguilar, who is, of course, UCLA in the quarter system. Their final exams are June 9th through the 13th. Maybe that can be done online. I saw a couple of responses from those who covered UCLA that Nico was in L.A., not surprisingly, and that maybe Aguilar can also do online classes, but he would not otherwise be on campus at Tennessee if he has to stay on campus in L.A. until early to mid-June.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that'll work. Maybe go on the Joe Burrow plan of like you just jump on campus when it's game day, basically, and you take all
you should be ashamed of yourself.
Hey, get an natty.
I mean, it was well known. He took all online classes at LSU. That was out there. He talked about how he's like not even around the students basically, except for during I guess bar tripping and Saturdays. I mean,
smoking cigars.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know how all that works now if you're in the middle of a semester, but I'm sure they'll get all that figured out. I think that's probably the least of their worries, but it's something you do have to take into consideration. But Deshaun Foster seems fired up, and I don't know why he wouldn't. I mean, he had a good quarterback, in place there with Aguilar, but it does feel like they potentially upgraded. We'll see, though. I mean, that's going to be the story. Again, it's going to be the comparison of those two players, those two programs, and what 2025 looks like.
My concern was, okay, for 2025, and you think about the UCLA roster, and I'm sure they wish they could have done this earlier, but if Nico had gone there in the winter, then you might see players like following him there.
Mm-hmm.
But considering that you don't have that much of a window here, and a lot of guys have already decided where they're going to go, especially based on how he did it, they can't really build that much up around him either. To
the portal's open through the rest of the week.
The portal's open for the rest of the week, but
yeah.
I think to get those other caliber players that are going to make him better, I don't think they can really do that all the way around. And they might have Nico for 1 year, and then Madden's going to be the quarterback in a year. If it goes well, if it doesn't go well, or well enough, then they might have him for 2 years before he's a pro, but he's draft eligible next year.
Well, let's face it, too. There's a lot of beer goggles going on with the transfer portal.
Yeah.
There's a lot of dudes that are picking the girl at like 1 a.m. as the bar's about to close, acting like it's a 10 5-star offensive lineman, and it's really like a 3-star offensive lineman at best. But we're going crazy because that's who's out there in the portal.
Right.
That's basically what happens
Supply
around
and
this
demand,
time.
baby.
You're like, yeah, let's go load up on who, like with who. And just because you get guys and it says wide receiver next to their name doesn't mean they're going to be a great wide receiver. And at this point, if they're ranked highly in the available, doesn't mean they're necessarily great. It means that's just who's out there still at this point. So, yeah, there's not a lot of great options. All the best shopping was done back during Christmas time. So I don't know how much they can really build out. Now, then again, like, who could maybe be a surprise, but you're right. The timing of it's not great if you wanted to really go all for it, because he's not going to be there past next year, Paul, like you're saying. I mean, I think he's made that clear in the comments that have come out. The plan when he was at Tennessee was to go pro after next year. So that's where his eyes are. And we'll see if that comes back to hurt them, not being able to really pad the team out, but they're taking a gamble and rolling with it. And it certainly has us talking way more about UCLA than we otherwise would be.